Hey everyone, welcome back to Hell Corridor. Another treat for myself. I've had Ronnie on 2 times. This is Brian Damage Forsythe from the goddamn Kicks band joining us today. How you doing, Brian?
Good.
So, what you been up to since the Kicks band broke up? You still playing with Rhino Bucket?
Yeah, we don't play that much, but when we do, I do the shows. But I've just been sort of taking it easy for the past year.
Rhino
So
Bucket. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say it's almost been a year since the last kick show. Man, time flies.
I still keep my ticket for that show in my pouch that I carry around with me. I like to keep a lot of my concert tickets because Kicks, my favorite band of all time. I kind of refer to myself as the biggest Kicks fan under the age of 50 because my father grew up in the Maryland area and he used to see you guys play with a band called Face Dancer. And I
Yeah.
remember hearing about Kicks because when I was younger, I really liked Poison, and my dad was like, "Oh, Poison just was a Kicks knockoff," and I was like, "Well, I haven't heard of Kicks." But then I went to the first M3, and I saw you guys play, and I saw literally everybody in that pavilion was so amped up, and I'm like, "Who the heck are these guys?" And I made it a point to see you guys every single year after that. I was always asking my parents, when am I going to go see Kicks again? And when I could finally start traveling on my own, it's like, where can I go see Kicks again?
Wow.
That last show, what was that like for you? Because I remember hearing some things from like Steve in interviews. You guys picked Merriweather because you didn't think it was going to sell out, but the pavilion itself sold out within 2 hours on that first day. I was working at a rubber factory at the time, and I was hiding my phone from my boss to try to to try to buy tickets. And it was only 5 minutes in, and we were kind of almost in no man's land there. So, what was that show like for you?
Um, well, it was a surprise. You know, had we known sooner, we would have done that more often, played, on our own at that place. Because all the other times we played there was always in a festival or or opening for somebody. So we never knew how much of the crowd was actually ours. And so that was a nice surprise to see all those people and to
That
know that we pulled those in.
that was when I saw you guys September 17th of last year there, because I had seen you at M3 countless times before that. But when I
Mhm.
had seen you guys playing there on its own, the production behind it, I was thinking to myself, is this what it would have been like if Kick sold 25 million records or like 50 million records? Is this what we would have gotten every single time? Because it was such a well produced show. I mean, minus that curtain at the beginning of the show, which what was that all about?
Oh, that was embarrassing. First of all, the curtain was too small, and then it never works. I think we tried it one time. We used that curtain. I think that was the third time we tried it there, and the first time it worked. The second time it didn't work. It was like one of those things where I don't know. I think I might have just picked it up and climbed out from underneath it. But yeah, only one time that we used it happened properly.
that was
But
that I've seen a lot of bands pull that off with the curtain, like Scorpions does it. I saw Judas Priest earlier this year, and they had their little trident logo. It sucked it up from the bottom, and it went from the floor all the way to the ceiling, and that was pretty cool. This it just looked like you guys as roadies were kind of just trying to tug on it and yank it down.
well, it was because it was the production that was provided. So a lot of those other bands have their own production, so they have that in place every night. So it's always when you do the one-off thing, it's always a hit or miss.
So, when I was talking with Ronnie the first time, I was talking about playing through COVID and things like that because you guys did a couple shows during COVID. I know you did the private one at Tally Ho, maybe
Mhm.
one other in a club in Pennsylvania. I'm 50-50 on that. That's kind of hazy.
I'm trying to remember.
And then you had those drive-in shows. that were outside. One of which I think the governor of Maryland had to give like an exemption for you guys to go out for.
Yeah,
Um,
those drive-in shows, they're pretty weird.
what was it like coming back from that? You know, when all the restrictions were lifted and you guys were able to play kind of wherever you want. What was that? What was that like?
Um, it's weird because, we having that big break where we
Mm-hmm.
weren't playing. Um, I don't know. I guess we all kind of, well, I can only speak for myself. I got used to being home and hanging out with my cat and just enjoying my house. And then we had to start back up playing again. At first, I was like, "Oh man," like, yeah, I didn't really want to. I was just comfortable being home. But I'm glad it started back up. But um, I know at the beginning people were just starved for entertainment at that point because
Mm-hmm.
everybody had been locked up, in their homes.
I was in that same boat because I used to see you guys at a club when I didn't see at M3. I live in northeastern Ohio, so when I would see you guys, you would play a bar in Warrendale, Pennsylvania, outside Pittsburgh, a little place called Jurgles.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I remember I wanted to see you guys in late 2020, but everything obviously happened, and I couldn't do that. And because Kick shows were kind of like my yearly thing that I would like to do, is I'd like to go see Kicks. And when you guys would come to my neck of the woods, that was actually a fairly rare occurrence. Um, Now, in regards to playing Merriweather, like I know that first M3, you guys did the first 2 years. It was a 1 day festival. And then in 2011, it became a 2 day festival, and you guys were asked to headline the first night, the Friday night. What
Yeah.
was that like to headline a festival? Because I'd assume that hadn't happened in quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, because it was Baltimore, it was obvious that
Hmm.
they asked us that. Um, yeah, that was cool. But then again, festivals have a built-in crowd, so you really don't know exactly um, which people are there to see you or that are just there. And
Hmm.
but it was cool. It was cool. There's a few times where those Friday nights, I think the one time Wasp played, they refused to open for us. So we said, okay, go ahead. And then as soon as we got done and they went on, it's like the crowd just thinned out.
Well, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the only time between like 2007 and 2022 that Wasp had even played in the United States. I think it was the only time they had appeared in the U.S. So the idea that like the crowd thinned out afterwards shows you guys just how loyal Baltimore is to the Kicks band. And
Yeah.
there was one there was one time I saw Kicks that was really truly bizarre, which was in M3 of 2017. I didn't know what was going on with Ronnie at the time, and you were out there playing guitar by yourself, and that must have been extraordinarily challenging, especially with songs like Midnight Dynamite, where it's just like if you have one guitar in Midnight Dynamite, it kind of sounds hollow. I mean, what was that like for you?
Yeah, yeah. That happened several times throughout our career. Um, where Ronnie was struggling
Hmm.
and I had to take over. And at first, back then, um, Bob Perry wasn't around, and
Hmm.
I was sort of resistant to getting another guy in there because it would be more work. I'd have to teach him everything, and then we'd have to rehearse.
Hmm.
Hated doing. Um, so I just took it upon myself because I had done it. I did it a couple times back in the '80s and was able to pull it off. So I just took the challenge and just did it. And we figured it was only temporary, and
Hmm.
Ronnie would be back soon. And then later on, when Ronnie finally had to go back to rehab, it wasn't so temporary. So we finally got Bob to come and do it. And I'm glad we did because he did a great job.
I always like to pick up on the dynamic between you and Ronnie. I'm a guitar player. I'm not the greatest, but I have a good enough understanding of the mechanics of the instrument. And I was mentioning with him last time he was on, you guys have very different playing styles. Like he's got more of a free wrist, but you're very, very meticulous with your playing. I don't want to say that Ronnie's sloppy, but he's a lot more free flowing, whereas you seem to be very meticulous with how you play the individual songs.
Yeah, that's kind of how that's a good way to describe it. He's just a little looser, and but somehow it works when you put it together.
I really enjoyed like because there were I really enjoyed how Kicks didn't really have a lead guitar player. I wouldn't say they just had two individual guitar players, which you don't see that very often in bands. But when you do see it, it shows that you two had a lot of respect for each other, and I
Yeah.
really enjoy seeing that on stage. Now you had an absence from the band, kind of, sort of near the end of the first time they were around, right? Like in the '90s.
Oh yeah. 93. I left the band. I moved out to California. Yeah, that was after Hotwire. Uh, we just had high hopes for Hotwire. After Blow My Fuse, we thought Hotwire was just going to take us over the top, and it didn't happen. So, I mean, the whole band was kind of disillusioned by that. And then, grunge was starting to happen,
Mhm.
um, and we were struggling internally. Um, at least I was. So I just I couldn't see. I saw it as like it was starting to go back downhill, and I
Mhm.
didn't. I knew what we came up through over the course of how many ever years that was to get to that point, and I just couldn't. I couldn't handle going back down the same way. So I jumped ship and took off and went out to California.
Was there ever sort of a frustration with that, because you guys had a hell of a record with Midnight Dynamite, and it seemed like a record that should have been, along with its contemporaries, like you had Out of the Cellar, Night Songs around that era. Like, what do you think the missing ingredient was with Midnight Dynamite? Why don't you think that record blew up?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. Management, poor management, the record company is of course a big part of it. Um, and timing. We just had bad, it seemed like our timing was just off our whole career until Blow My Fuse.
Now, Blow My Fuse, when that came along, you guys kind of rode a little bit of a wave of success there near the end of the 1980s. You guys played Japan a couple times. I'm sure that must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Don't Close Your Eyes was a very, very, very big single for you guys. Um, I can see how there might have been some frustration with Hotwire, because, like, in every single way, that was a very good record. I mean, it seemed like you guys had really nailed your sound. I mean, I was talking with Ronnie a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this show that I found on YouTube. It's a Hammerjack show on July 4th, 1991. And he
Yeah.
says that, in his opinion, that's the best the band has ever been, like, technically, in his opinion. He thinks that that's when you guys were kind of at your height of performance, and how you guys put
Prob
things together.
yeah, probably. Um, yeah. Personally, I thought Hotwire was that was my favorite record. But th- it was sort of like the natural progression. They got better as they went along. So every time we finished a record, that was my favorite record. And
Uh,
you know, so after Blow My Fuse, Hotwire, we did that, and I just felt musically it was our best record. And yeah, that really added to the frustration.
Rock Your Face Off didn't become your favorite record?
Oh no, actually, um, yeah, I'm just referring to the old records.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, actually, I was really surprised how well that one turned out. I,
It was
I,
so.
I mean,
I talk
going
about that record so much. I love it.
yeah, going into it, when we first started working on things, like I remember I'd go over to Mark Shanker's house and he had all these demos of song ideas and we just started fishing through these tapes. And I remember being really apprehensive. I thought, oh man, we've never done this without Donnie, and I didn't want to put out a crappy record. And but we really really worked hard on it. Everyone put it in a lot of work. So when it came out, uh well, actually towards the end I could see it. I was, the I could see it happening. But I was really surprised how well that came out.
I'm amazed how much it sounded like Kicks. That's what impressed me is how much it really did sound just like Kicks.
Yeah, it's funny because that was my main concern.
What was it not sounding like Kicks?
No, I mean, I was the gatekeeper.
Oh,
I kept it on track um, because Mark Shanker, he's a lot younger than us,
mhm.
and he co-wrote a bunch of the songs actually, with this other guy. What's his name? I'm gonna blank on his name. He used to be in Funny Money. Rob, I think it's Rob.
I don't. I only know Dean Kramer from Funny Money. I don't know a
Oh,
lot
it
of
wasn't
guys over
Dean.
there.
But anyway, he was a co-writer on some of those, and a lot of those songs that those guys wrote together, they were good ideas, but they were a lot heavier sounded. I mean, they
Mhm.
sounded like modern rock, and so um, so I was sort of the filter that it had
You
to
had to
go
tone
through.
it down a bit.
Yeah.
I remember that's kind of that record is almost what kind of got me back into like a frenzy with this band because it's my favorite band of all time, right? I love Kicks so much, and I remember I was dating a girl at the time. She was at college. We were just hanging out at her college's cafeteria, and the college has a local radio station around here. And I was hearing "Love Me with Your Top Down," and I'm just like, that is very unusual to hear in this part of the country on like normal radio. And it
Ah.
kind of reinvigorated my love for the band. And I was always hoping, maybe we'll get another, maybe we'll get one more, but that didn't come to pass. Was it ever discussed? Like, did you guys ever talk about putting out more material?
Yeah, we did. Like right after we did that record. Um, but I think it was so draining. It took so much to do that, um, especially for me and Mark. I
Mhm.
remember talking to him, and he goes, "Oh, I don't know if I can go through that again." But then we started working on those remixes, and so that kind of took up the time, and that DVD that came out of the making
Oh,
of.
oh yeah, I remember that. They Can't Stop the Show documentary. Very
Yeah.
excellent. I recommend everybody who's watching this to give that a watch because honestly, I really like the kind of nitty gritty that you guys get into and stuff like that. The live show that you guys recorded at Tally Ho to go along with it was also phenomenal. Um,
Yeah, we wait, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean that kind of, but that's I think what happened was uh, Steve was really pushing for it, and he was frustrated because we weren't into it, and so that's what led to his solo record during the pandemic.
did you listen to that record?
His solo record?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's I love that record. It's like the Funny Money album we never got. If I ever
right.
get him on here, I'd love to get it. I'd love to get into that. But I loved every last bit of it. I think that's probably one of the better records that has come out over the last 5 years. Because it's kind of Kicks, but it's also his own thing, which I
Yeah,
love listening to. It's a lot better than not to throw shade, but it's a lot better than Donnie Parnell's record was. He put out one over the last couple of years ago, and it's not rock and roll. I don't know if you heard it, but he put out a
Yeah,
record called Hooray. It sounds like 1970s yacht rock.
yeah. Well, I think he just did it for himself, you know, and he didn't. He was trying. I think he was trying not to fall into the Kicks thing.
Not to
But
sound like rock and roll. Yeah. So that last show, were you guys were you satisfied with the end result of that? Like, do you ever look back and think, well, what would I change about this? What songs could we have played instead?
um, nah. I mean, I kind of accept it. I don't know if you heard, but well, earlier that year, I had a stroke.
Oh, because you had a carbon monoxide leak in your house, right?
Yeah. So at that point, and I jumped back into it to playing
Mhm.
really quick, probably too quick. So I was really struggling at that point. I still hadn't gotten it all back,
Oh,
and there was there's so many songs that I would have loved to have played, but I couldn't even play them. I was having trouble with the ones we played.
I remember I was when I was talking with Ronnie, he brought up he wanted to do the Nutwagon dog fight,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jimmy had apparently said, I don't think that's going to go over too well.
uh yeah, see that's one thing. Uh, That was fun when we were back when we were doing it, but I haven't thought about I'd have to relearn the whole thing. That I
Mm.
just that's overwhelming to think about.
Is that kind of where the snippets came from? Is that kind of why you guys did that, so you could get little bits in there and not have to relearn the entire songs?
Yeah, yeah, partly. And also we just didn't have time to do all that, you know. And we thought we had to play like certain songs, and then we thought, you know, we just take those and yeah,
Compress them a bit.
yeah.
Was there ever a discussion about playing Walking Away there? Because like the show was called Walking Away, and I know you guys did the snippet of it. I was kind of thinking like they gotta play it, right? Like why didn't that come to the table?
Yeah, it got discussed at one point, and then I don't know what happened. I think really Steve always had the final say because he had to sing the stuff, and I
Right.
forget why, but he actually he's the one that came up with the sniplet thing. So
Oh,
that
really?
got that's his that was his way of getting out of it.
Oh, I remember hearing some of those, and I was just thinking to myself, man, I really like when I heard Loveaholic, I was like, you mean they're not gonna play the whole song? But you
Yeah.
can't always, not everybody can get what they want. But there was something, we were talking about Rock Your Face Off. There's one thing that stood out to me on that final show that just hasn't left my mind over like the last year. You guys didn't play a single song off that record, not even in the snippet form.
Yeah, I know. I know. And we've been doing like uh geez, my mind's going blank today.
You're good,
Um
Brian.
what's the fast one?
Wheels of Motion.
Yeah, yeah, we've been doing that, and all of a sudden there was a few songs I was sort of sad that I'd never get to play again that we didn't do on that show.
I'm just gonna ask this, and I'm gonna be as blunt as possible. What the hell happened with Cool Kids? I wasn't around at the time, but it's funny because I was talking with Roddy a couple weeks ago, and I asked, "What's your least favorite Kick song?" And you can't say anything off Cool Kids because that's cheating. What happened with that record?
Ah, that well, you know that was the second record. The first record, the record company kind of just let us go and do what we wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and and they didn't know what to do with us. So the second record, they kind of pushed us to do more singles.
Mm.
And so that was our attempt at singles. Um and also they threw three cover songs at us that
Body
weren't ours.
Talk was one of those, right?
Yeah, Body Talk, Cool Kids, and Burning Love. And and yeah, and they started the album off with Burning Love, which is a totally
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. It's mostly keyboards and there's no guitar solo.
So hold on a
And
second. You're saying Loco Emotion was an original?
uh yeah.
Oh,
That's Donnie's attempt at a pop single.
I don't mean to dog on it, but that song is god awful.
Well, it was the early 80s.
There was a there was a there was a video. There was like, oh, you had a TV spot. I can't remember what show it was, but you guys were playing at the Seagull Inn, and Steve was doing an audience call back during that song, and I was like, this has got to be the cheesiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, that was yeah, the USA hotspots.
Oh yeah, no. Ronnie was the answer he eventually gave me was he said Scarlet Fever was his least favorite Kick song, and I know you have a particular distaste towards that song.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I refused to play it for years, but I finally gave in. And you know, it's not that bad of a
It's three
song.
songs in one. I think that's the only thing that the song really struggles with is you have three different parts that on their own might be good songs, but they don't blend well together kind of at all.
Yeah, well, that song I remember we had just sort of started working on it right before the record. So it was just a rough idea and we finished it in the studio. So we didn't really like most of the time when we're going to do a record, we'd already have the songs and we'd be playing them live.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd work out all the little details live, you know, from playing them live.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't get to do that with that song. That one and Crybaby was the same thing. We sort of finished them in the studio. And that I think the reason why Ronnie and I don't like the Scarlet Fever song is because Mike Slamer plays the guitar solo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we had a kind of a resentment.
I remember when you guys started playing that at the last show, I was thinking to myself that this took up one of the spots. I mean, it's not a terrible song. I'm sure the fans like it, but to me, it just, I think that might have been, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but was that kind of like maybe convenience? Because I know you guys have been playing that song quite a bit over the last couple years before that.
Yeah, I think partly, but yeah, it's that's to me it's sort of just a filler song.
What would you say your favorite Kick song is? Do you have one?
Wow, it's hard to pick because I mean, as far as like playing live and the feel of the
Hmm.
song, I think Cold Blood has always been my favorite.
That's a really good live tune. Always has
Yeah,
been. I'd say probably off the record, like off of the album, my favorite Kick song would probably be Red Light Green Light TNT. I think that is an excellent opener. It's a very fast-paced song. Live, I gotta give it to No Ring Around Rosie because that's a very powerful, very energetic kind of song. And it's one Steve was always able to sing extremely well because it doesn't go overboard on the
yeah,
high notes. I kind of felt bad because the last couple years you guys played, a lot of people don't pick up on stuff like this, but I make music, so I kind of do. I kind of noticed when you guys started tuning it down a half step. At that point, I thought to myself, they got a couple years. They're probably winding down. Because when a
yeah.
band starts doing that, you think, it's probably getting a little tougher to sing it. And I think Steve beat up on himself a little too much because I heard him say in interviews he was feeling humiliated because he couldn't sing Cold Blood the way he used to.
Yeah, he was very self-conscious about that. And you know, you listen to it live and you don't really notice,
Hmm.
but I know how it feels when, you know, personally, like for in my case, you know, my guitar playing wasn't, I didn't feel it was not, I was, you know, not up to par. But I listened to, you know, I'd see someone's phone
Filming it, yeah.
filming it and it sounded fine, but on stage I was just struggling and I was just, you know, after the show was done, I just thought I did a horrible job and you know, I did as the best I could, but
That last show, I'm thinking about the set list, And I think what you guys did well is you really captured all the songs everybody would have wanted to hear, even if they were a little difficult to play. Like Cold Shower, if we're talking about hard to hit vocals, I mean that's one of the top songs there. But you guys pulled it off anyway. I was really happy to hear Atomic Bombs get added back into the set list, and I can't think of a better song to open with than
Yeah.
Atomic Bombs because it's like
You
the
know,
first song off your
yeah,
first record.
yeah, that's funny because when Ronnie, Donnie, and I first our first very first rehearsal, like when we got together just to try it out to see, well, they were actually trying me out,
Mm-hmm.
because they were already together and they were looking for another guitar player. So they came, I was living at my parents and they
Mm-hmm.
came there and we went down in the basement and the very first song we worked on was Atomic Bombs.
It
So we
sounded that's such everybody likes to lump Kicks in as like a hair band or a glam band or whatever, but I listen to Atomic Bombs and I'm like, that is one hard lick that song has. I mean, that is a really hard lick for a quote hair song. Um, I remember when I first heard it, I thought like that sounds like look what the cat dragged in, but they're actually completely different songs. When Atomic Bomb came out, that's what Ronnie says his favorite Kicks album is actually is the first album
huh.
because he said
Yeah.
it's you guys being you more than anything. He said you all were in the same room recording at the same time, and he said it was more raw.
Oh, definitely,
That's
definitely. I
good.
remember, um, I have memories from that recording session. And when we did Atomic Bombs, um, Donnie, when Donnie he did the, well, it's funny because we did the rough tracks all together, and we went back into the control room to listen to it, and the bass was out of tune,
Oh boy.
and then and but the feel was so good we just left it, and it
Mm-hmm.
it actually adds to the heaviness because it's slightly out of tune.
Mm-hmm. I really wish that I mean, I'm a choosing beggar here. It's just I really wish you guys would have played more of the deep cuts at the last show. I mean, I understand why you didn't. It's more to learn stuff like that. But there are so many gems that I feel like a lot of people don't really, especially from the show business album. And I'm not sure how much you were involved with that album because it was kind of during a period where you'd stepped away. But I think that's a very very underrated record, and the fact it came out when it did was very very unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to do, some of those songs, but I didn't suggest anything because I didn't think I could play it.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
but yeah, there's some good ones on that.
I
Um,
I really love how heavy the bass got on that record. Like you listen to a song like "I'm Bombed" or "Fireballs," like those are very heavy hitting songs, and it kind of escaped that reverb, absolutely no bass sound that 1980s record producers loved for some reason.
yeah, they overused the effects. That yeah, we did Fireballs live a few times over the years.
Yeah, I think you played it at Penn's Peak like 14,
Yeah,
15 years ago. It seemed
yeah.
like you guys would always play the same spots every year, which, that's nice. It's consistency. Is there ever a venue you guys played at that you didn't particularly like you had complaints about it?
Let me think. Like our entire career.
Well,
There's
let's keep it in the last 10 years because that's more so when I know Mark said there was a venue you guys played a lot in North Carolina where it was like really hot sometimes or like all the time you guys played there.
Oh, let me think. Where is he thinking of?
Or was it Raleigh? I can't remember. It was some theater.
Oh, yeah, the Lincoln Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there. Yeah, that was hot. And there was another one in the early 2000s, up near Harrisburg, called Tubby's.
Hmm.
That that I think was the hottest club that I've ever played.
What was it like? Because I remember I heard from Ronnie, I heard from Steve, not that I talked to Steve directly, but in interviews, like the reason Kicks got back together was because sometimes The Blues Vultures would open for Funny Money, and a club owner, Bob something, don't know his name, got the idea to call you up and fly you over and do a Kicks show. Now, can you kind of, what was it like to get that call? Like, were you skeptical? Did you want to do it? Like, what was that? What was that like?
Um, no, I wasn't. I was willing to do it, and it was funny because at the time, uh, um, it was well, it was Rick Parks actually. He
Oh,
was the
okay.
promoter, and he was putting the show on. It was at the Gun Club in Hagerstown. We eventually ended up playing there outdoors,
Hmm.
and it wasn't bad. But this particular one was an indoor show, and he asked me what I would need to do the show, and I just told him I just the first it was the first time I ever asked for what I wanted,
Hmm.
and it was too much.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I asked for it, and he considered it, but then they couldn't sell enough tickets to cover everything.
Hmm.
So that's what got me. And then I started talking to Steve, and he goes, we all should get that much because I had flights involved, and
Hmm.
I didn't want to have to spend money to get there, and
Hmm.
so me and Steve discussed, we all should make, like this good amount of money for what we should, what we deserve. So that's what got us to actually do it.
I believe Ronnie said when you guys first started coming back from the hiatus, he that you guys dubbed the show Four Fifths of Kicks because
Yeah.
he didn't want to stiff Ronnie in his no, not Ronnie, stiff Donnie, on the billing and whatnot, because he didn't want to call it Kicks unless it was everyone.
Yeah, those first few shows that we did, 4 or 5 shows, I think, maybe not even that many, at the end of 2003. And then we built it as 3/4 of kick, or four
Fifths.
4/5. And
Now,
yeah, then after that we oh, well, I know what happened. After that, Mark Shanker says, well, who owns the name? And he researched it and found out nobody owned it. So he bought the name. And then after that we called it.
that's pretty interesting that nobody owned the name at that point in time.
Yeah.
I I know that there was a reason Donnie wasn't a part of it. Was that like something you guys like mutually agreed upon, or was that just kind of like an unspoken thing?
Well, I remember questioning it if we should at least invite him. And Steve and Donnie had a really bad falling out at the
Hmm.
end, or yeah, and in the mid 90s. And Steve just didn't want to work with him anymore. And then and then I find out that Jimmy didn't want to work with him anymore. And I said, I don't really want to work with him anymore myself. It would have been more trouble than it would have been worth. I mean, the whole reason we did that reunion was to have fun
Hmm.
and make some money. And if Donnie would have been involved, those two things wouldn't have happened. It
You
would,
would have you ought to have one or the other, but you wouldn't have had both. Yeah.
well, and now we wouldn't have neither, because he would have been. I mean, it would have been the same as it used to be, and he'd been in control of everything.
Now, Ronnie kind of sees it, and like when I talk with him, it's kind of like a glass half full kind of thing, where he's like he's glad Donnie had the iron fist to an extent because it pushed you guys and made you as good as you could be. But
Yeah.
did you ever feel like you didn't? I mean, the process of making a record back then, right? Were there ever times where you guys just couldn't get your input in? I mean, how difficult was he really to work with?
Well, yeah, I mean, I give him credit. I mean, he's a great songwriter,
Mhm.
and he did push the band. I mean, he's the reason we got as far as we did. Um, but then again, at the end, he was kind of the demise of the band. Um, it's he he was a control freak, and it kept like progressing as it went along. At first, we were allowed to have more input, but near the end, it he'd show up with a complete demo of a song. It was already done, and so we just basically learn it.
Oh, okay.
Well, except for the solos, but
Oh yeah, of course. Um, that last show you guys played last year, was there ever really a big discussion on getting? Because Ronnie was kind of, when I talked with him, he wasn't really. I mean, he was in the band kind of, but he wasn't like behind the scenes like you were. You were a very consistent member. Was there ever a discussion about maybe having Donnie make a guest appearance? Like, was there any talk of that, or was that just something that never came
mm,
up?
yeah, we talked about it. Um, I would have been willing, but you know, everything we've heard, like Donnie stopped talking to us when we got back together. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he sort of just disowned us,
Mm-hmm.
and I never heard directly from him, but people that were around him would say that he doesn't even want to talk about kicks anymore, and I don't think he would have done it anyway, even if we would have asked him.
Oh, okay. I know Kip Winger worked with him a couple times after that, but nobody
Yeah.
seems to really know what he's up to. I mean, I'm grateful to him for allowing Kicks to be what it was, because those were some great songs you guys had, great set of records. I have a lot of respect for the guy, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, as performers, you kind of have to do what allows you to have the most freedom, right? And allows you to have the least amount of stress on a stage. Because when I saw Kicks, I saw a band that was having fun on stage. And, I'd see a lot of bands at M3. You could tell they were there for the paycheck. Not naming names, I'm not that kind of guy. But there were some bands there where you would just be like, why are they even here? They're just kind of standing like statues, and it doesn't even seem like they want to be present.
Yeah, yeah. When a band gets to that point, they might as well give it up.
I have a lot of respect for Kicks for giving it up rather than just kind of fading out. Because I remember at one point Steve did an interview. He said he kind of wanted to just play the remaining dates and then stop booking shows and whatnot. But I really love the fact you guys gave the fans one last chance to come out there and see you guys, especially in a venue as great as Merriweather, especially in your backyard. I mean, my family, we got up at 5, and I invited my ex-girlfriend who I wasn't even dating anymore, but she loved Kicks thanks to me. So I was like, let's go. We loaded everybody in the van. We drove the 6 hours, stayed up all day, saw you guys, and then got right back in the van and drove home. And we were tired, but that was a phenomenal show. But I remember something sticks out to me. I stopped at a 7-Eleven on the way back, like right outside Columbia, and there were people there. They saw my shirt, and one guy asked me, "When do you think they're coming back?" And I was just like, "I don't know what band you're talking about because I just do not see Kicks coming out of retirement because you guys picked the right time. Because the fact of the matter is, you guys were probably a little tired. Steve had the neuropathy, you had a stroke. Let's see, Jimmy died. That's a pretty big one.
That is.
I mean, I have a lot of respect for a band that doesn't want to get kicked out and that understands, our time is done. We're going to go out sounding pretty damn good. And we're going to make sure our last show was a good show. Because you guys never resorted to backing tracks. At least not like, again, I don't want to name names, but some bands out there, you see the singers, they're clearly singing along with the track. And that just that's very off putting. I have very strong opinions on that. Steve never did that.
Yeah,
And
that's what he didn't want to come to that. So that's,
there are a lot of bands out there from the 80s that you can tell that's what they're doing, and it's really disheartening. And some should have retired a decade or more ago, but
yeah.
you guys understood when it was time to say when. And to me, that takes more guts, right, than sitting there until the end and having to get drug out of there. Because, you know, if you have your drummer die on stage, I'd say
Yeah.
that's, which by the way, you were present for that. Ronnie wasn't. So I can ask you, what was the room in the mood? What was the mood in the room at that time? Like, because I saw a video. Steve tries to start the blow my fuse mantra, and normally you hear those drums, and that didn't happen. Were you aware before then? When did you kind of become alert to when something was going
Well,
on?
right when Steve, yeah, because I was looking at Jimmy, I was
Mm,
facing him, and I was unaware. I thought he was fixing something down, like his bass drum pedal, because
mm,
he was bent down, and but then when he didn't get back up after Steve announced the song, right then and there I knew something was wrong, and I remember making eye contact with Jimmy's drum tech and going, something's wrong, and he ran over there and picked him up, and that's when we knew. Um, yeah, that was horrible. Um, but thanks to Mark Shanker and Brandon, my guitar tech, both those guys know CPR, and they pretty much they did. They saved the slide till the paramedics got there.
that's pretty
But
incredible.
yeah, everyone. I mean, it, it's hard to describe. You're standing there just praying,
Mm-hmm.
for Jimmy to make it, to pull through. And I mean, it was terrible. It was that feeling but then when I heard him gasping for air,
Mm-hmm.
like coming back, I wasn't quite relieved at that point, but at least I knew he wasn't dead.
Mm-hmm. And the fact he was able to come back and play, I mean, we didn't get the backing vocals, but at that point, it's like, who cares, right? Because Jimmy, the fact that he was able to come back on the road with you guys for a couple months there,
Yeah.
that's a hell of a story. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that. Although, you
Yeah.
know, we all miss the vocals a little bit because Jimmy's backing vocals were always such a big part of that Kick sound. You know, you listen to a song like Cold Shower and then they're gone. It almost doesn't sound like the same song anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. He had this high, he had, he always did those really high parts, but he, when he came back, he had like a heart monitor that he'd keep track of, and especially the first few shows back, and the singing is what took him, like it would raise his heart rate way up there. So he
Mm-hmm.
figured he could probably pull it off if he didn't sing.
No, he was the one that set the cap at we're done in September, right? Like that was his.
He was done. Yeah,
He was
he,
done. Okay.
he said he was done, and then we had shows. We were booked till the next M3, and then when he said he was done, Steve said, you know what? If Jimmy's not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And I thought, I was pushing to at least finish out the year.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and Matt Starr, his Jimmy's fill-in
Mm-hmm.
for when he was out, said he would do it too. So I was like hoping, Matt said he'll do it, and I think the compromise was that last show, because there again, Steve's idea was just to fade off, fade
Walk
off
away
into the
from it.
distance
Yeah.
and don't say anything. And then, at some point they'd figure it out. And I said, we can't do that. And then so we all had a big Zoom meeting and discussed it. And I was bummed that we couldn't finish out the year. But in fact, there was another Jurgles show. It was
Yeah, in
already booked.
December, it was the last one booked for that year.
Yeah. So I was bummed about that, but then finally, that was a compromise, was the final show. And now looking back at it, I'm sort of glad it happened like that.
Now, did you guys? One thing that got me about that though was like, do you guys feel like you announced it? Maybe. I mean, I know you had to announce it fast, but I can only imagine because I didn't go to that M3 that year. I can only imagine somebody just went to M3 and they're just like, now I gotta come out here again, or fly out here again, or drive out here again, and I just showed up. I mean, that must have, for some people, it might have stunk a little bit.
Well, well, we hadn't made the final decision. Um, that M, well, Steve, when did he announce that at M3?
Yeah, that he announced it right before you guys played Don't Close Your Eyes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, Merriweather, they asked us not to. Well, actually, we hadn't put it together yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, that all came about right after that. But yeah, there's always like when you're working with a venue, they always have these rules, they
Uh,
don't want you to announce it till a certain date. And I think it's to cause a big frenzy.
right. Now, that must have been a little difficult to announce, I'm sure. I mean, Steve even said it was tough to get through. I mean, that I can only imagine looking at a hometown crowd, the biggest crowd you guys play every single year, probably, and having to say, we're going to call it quits later this
Mhm.
year, and it's going to be right here in this room. I mean, again, if I ever get Steve on, I'll have to ask him about kind of having to do that. But
Yeah, I'm a little blurry on the timeline. Did he mention doing it at Merriweather?
yeah, he had a video. I saw a video on you guys' Facebook page because he announced at M3. It was like footage from the Jumbotron, and he was like, "We've decided after 45 years, we're gonna call it a career. We're gonna do a show here September 17th, and you know,
Okay. Okay. So we had discussed it prior to that. Yeah, I'm not, wasn't sure. My,
because
my time.
he said the discussion was kind of like you guys maybe said we'll do a couple clubs or stuff like that, and he's like, nah, that'll sell out. So let's play Merriweather because it won't sell out. Like, I mean, was there a discussion of kind of announcing it and then just playing clubs, or how did you guys hone in on Merriweather?
Um, well, because I mean, first the final show was going to be in Hinckley, Minnesota.
Minnesota. Who the hell
And
wants to end a career in Hinckley, Minnesota?
I know. So when we did decide on Merriweather, well, no, because we wanted a big show, and the Baltimore area is the only logical place for a final show, and Merriweather's been really good to us all those years.
Mhm.
So we got that guy on the Zoom meeting with us, and he was all excited. He was talking about all the production and stuff that we could do. So it was the obvious place. I
Now
mean,
the
we thought about Ram's Head, but that was too small.
Now when you guys were trying to pick the opening act, were there names other than Child's Play thrown up, or was that like the obvious choice? Because I
Yeah, I
was
don't.
thinking Corrupt maybe. When I heard that, I was like, who's gonna open for them? I'm like, I don't know, maybe Corrupt or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that came up pretty quick, having Child's Play, and then we just sort of went with it.
Because that last M3 you guys played last year, I think that's the only M3 you guys ever closed out the whole festival. Because you guys played the last show on the last day.
Uh-huh.
Now, speaking of Merriweather, I got something I'm gonna ask you about because I've only vaguely heard about it. I'm not sure if you remember this or not. Apparently, there was a time when you guys were opening for a band there. I think it was the Tubes,
Yeah.
and their manager had asked you not to play. Do you have memories of that?
Yeah, we're somewhere down in like Florida or something. We got the call that we got us the opening slot for the Tubes. That's the first time we ever played Merriweather,
Mm,
and so we had to beeline it back to Maryland,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, we did some shows after that with them. We did a few up in New York and around, but that was the first one. And I remember the we were doing sound check, and this guy, Fee Waybill, the main tube, the
mm-hmm,
main guy in the tubes, he walks out on stage, and we hadn't played yet. We just were setting up our stuff,
mm-hmm.
and he looks at our back line. We had that horrible back line, the one with the girders and the
Mm-hmm.
and uh and he looks at that and he goes, I forget what exactly what he said, something like you looks like you guys are going to be loud or something like that. And I remember our roadie Dave Toms, he didn't know who he was. He didn't know that that was the singer of the Tubes,
Mm-hmm.
and he, don't worry about it. Just, and and from then on, there was this friction between us and Fee Waybill, and then to top it off, that um, he had these three backup singers called Tubettes, and they ended up just hanging out in our dressing room, and he hated that. So,
Mm-hmm.
he tolerated us for a few shows, and then we got kicked off the tour.
Uh, Now, there was also another instance at Merriweather where you guys opened for Judas Priest and Whitesnake was supposed to be the opener. How did you guys end up on that bill?
Oh, I was out on a Rhino Bucket tour at the time, and so
Oh.
I don't know how it came about, but yeah, they just needed another band. I didn't know Whitesnake dropped out, but
Yeah, Whitesnake was supposed to be the opener. They were the opener on that tour. And I'm thinking
uh,
to myself, listen, I love Kicks. I love Judas Priest. I don't know how you mix the two together because these are
yeah.
very, very different sounding bands.
Well, actually, our first arena, well, it wasn't an arena, it was the Baltimore Civic Center.
Hmm.
Uh, our first show, our first major show opening for somebody was Judas Priest.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I thought you guys' first big opener was for Triumph. Or was that just the first like tour you guys did?
Yeah, that was a tour, but this was a one-off at the Civic Center, and we
Mm.
opened. It was right after the record. I don't even know if it had been released yet. I have to look at the date, but it was Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and then us.
One of
And
these things isn't like the other.
I know, and it was before Iron Maiden was really big too, and it was their former singer, and like I didn't know those guys, and they just, you know, I knew who Judas Priest was, but Iron Maiden, I wasn't real familiar with them.
Mm. A couple more things before I wrap it up here. Now, Rhino Bucket's still playing, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys are on a tour right now, but you guys do a couple shows a year, I'd assume.
Yeah, in fact, we're doing what's that called? Rock Timber.
Oh,
And
in Minnesota.
yeah, we're doing that next month.
I really wish you guys would have been booked at M3 this year because the first place I ever saw Rhino Bucket was actually M3. I had gotten like false information at the night before. I was like, who the hell's Rhino Bucket? What kind of name is that? And then my uncle was like, I think that's Donnie Purnell's band. And I was like, oh, I'll go check that out. And then you walk out on stage and I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's Donnie Purnell's band, but fucking, I'm going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, and we tried to get on M3 this year, but for some reason we couldn't pull it off.
I was kind of hoping. I mean, this is just a personal thing. I was kind of hoping Steve would host the festival. For some reason, I thought that would be kind of fitting, but I think he's tired.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could. He seems to just be enjoying his retirement. He doesn't really want to go out and play anymore, which that's perfectly acceptable. You do it long enough. I mean, isn't he the oldest of all you guys? I know you were born in '57. I think he was born.
Yeah, well, actually, let me think. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, because I know, I
Now
know.
he is.
Oh, because I know Ronnie's the youngest. Well, no, Mark
No,
was.
Ronnie's comes in second
Really?
behind. Yeah, and then
Oh,
it's Jimmy, then it's me.
oh, I thought Ronnie was a year younger than you, huh? It's kind of hard to find information about this online.
Yeah, I used to be the youngest until Mark Schenker came along. And then Bob came along. He was the youngest.
Oh, really? What was that like working with Bob in the beginning? I mean, you got an entirely new guitar player. I mean, he's very proficient, very adequate. In fact, I'd say he's excellent. I know that he had connections with Mark before then. I think he was in the Sun Dogs with Mark, that Rush tribute band.
Yeah, I've known Bob for a while. I'm trying to remember. Um, yeah, his band used to open for us a lot.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, Everrise,
Mm-hmm.
and then I knew he'd be able to handle it
Mm-hmm.
because he's a good guitar player. But we're looking for someone that was familiar with. Well, you know what was funny was probably at least a year or more before Ronnie left,
Mm-hmm.
Bob sent me a uh, a demo of him playing Ronnie's parts. He says, if you ever need anybody, I got your back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that he was the obvious choice because he'd learned the songs, he was ready. Um, and again, we didn't have to rehearse. We
Mm-hmm.
just rehearsed at the sound check.
Oh, so he was definitely the go-to guy, should it ever come to that again, which it did.
Yeah, he was more than just the guitar player too. I mean, when he came to the band, he really helped us out with the production stuff and technical stuff because
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy was always the technical guy. Well, Mark too, but Bob was a big help with that.
Now, there's it's amazing. The first time I ever saw you guys was at the first M3, and there are still videos of that online, like from the Jumbotron, like pro shot stuff on the Kickstube YouTube channel. Is there a reason we didn't get a pro shot of the last show? I mean, was that discussed, or is it just something that never came up?
Um, I'm trying to think of the
Because I'd have loved a DVD.
well, I think it was well, for one thing, to put that out on DVD, it'd be considered a soundtrack and you have to get clearance licensing.
Oh,
And on Donnie's songs, we couldn't get that. In fact, that's what
oh,
happened with remember that the Kicks Live that we did like early on.
at Ram's Head, right?
Yeah, we released that and that was on Frontiers Records, and that's before our record. And that's when we started. We were trying to find someone to distribute it, and they they said they would put that out if we would agree to do a full studio album for
Mm-hmm.
them. So that's what got us doing the record. And then it turns out that they put that DVD out and they didn't clear it. They didn't do the license.
Oh.
So Donnie's lawyer called him, got in touch with them, and they had to pull it after 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
which, they got their money's worth in that time. And so they totally screwed up on the whole thing. So that allowed us to get out of the contract and go with Loud
Loud
and
and
Proud.
Proud. Who,
Yeah.
by the way, that seems to be the record company that's putting out all the records for the 80s bands. Every time one comes out from like LA Guns and whatnot, that seems to be the label that's doing it.
Loud and Proud?
Yeah, they put out LA Guns last couple records and Lynch Mob's album a couple years ago. I can't remember what it's called. There's
Yeah, I don't
just
even
so
know.
much out there.
I don't know if they exist anymore.
Really? Now, last thing. When it comes to sorry, my brain's scrambled. I got like no sleep last night. When it comes to kicks as a whole, are do you have anything like what do you get the most out of having played in kicks? Like what are you most grateful for from that? Because I know that's a long career you guys had doing that.
Uh, well, for one thing, that was my childhood dream
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And I'm grateful that I was able to do it that long. I mean, I remember in the mid 70s, being in bands, cover bands, and then when I met Donnie and when we worked on Atomic Bombs, I thought, wow, usually when you go see a band play, like back in those days, they throw in their original songs here
Mm.
and there. And usually when they announce their original song, it's always the worst song. You go, oh.
Not
And
this.
but Atomic Bombs was a cool song. And I remember Donnie's whole goal was to put some songs together and get a record deal. And it happened. And I'm so glad that I was able to be there and experience that. And all those years, like not only the live shows, but even being in the studio and doing all that, it's just I wouldn't trade that for anything.
You guys did the what? You did a tour with, was it Whitesnake or Rat or both? Like,
Oh, we did, yeah, the same year we did one with Rat first, and then we got Whitesnake
and
tour
you were
after.
playing some big arenas at that point.
Hmm.
I mean, that to me, I can imagine you guys must have felt on top of the world, and maybe why you had such, high hopes for Hotwire, because it's like maybe we can knock ourselves up onto the headlining spot.
Yeah, we were sort of, yeah, that's how the every record it was a progression. And up until then, we had some one-offs at arenas, but
Mm,
we never had a full tour. And that was the first time we had a tour bus. It was like the real deal.
mm-hmm. You guys played in Japan. Now, Ronnie was telling me you guys couldn't leave your hotel over there sometimes when you were in Japan because there were a bunch of people outside.
Yeah, they'd have to sneak us down and down into the garage, and then we'd come out.
There was a video produced for that was never released, but you can find bootlegs of it online. Have you ever watched any of those?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have several copies.
How many times how many times do you guys play over there?
Well, I played twice with those guys. They went back there again one other time when after I left.
Oh, okay. That I could never go to Japan. That flight's just too long for me because I can imagine you guys leaving from probably like the DC area. What is that, like 20 hours? That's insane.
Well, we'd leave. I think we'd left. I'm trying to remember what that flight was. I think we went to the West Coast and then from there.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on with me. This has been a lot of fun. Just the idea that now I've met two members of my favorite band of all time. That's something you just don't get to do. I remember I was telling Ronnie that, and he's like, "Yeah, this is if I would have got to meet Joe Perry." So I guess I'll leave off with who would you have liked to have met? It can be living or dead.
Well, one person I still haven't met is Keith Richards.
Oh, yeah, you seem like a Stones guy, and I know
Yeah.
you had brought up who's that? The blues band. You said you really liked them when you were on that metal show. Black Keys.
Oh, did I mention them? Yeah, I
Yeah.
like them.
I really hope that any up and coming rock bands that you've noticed, or do you not really listen much anymore to the new guys?
Yeah, here and there something catch my ear. I really like Blackberry Smoke.
Never heard of
Uh,
them.
oh, they're great. They're more Southern rock.
I
They're
should
from
definitely
Atlanta.
I
Yeah, they're
should
from
definitely take
Atlanta.
notice then.
Yeah, Black Crows. I like Black Crows kind of I loved them when they first came out, and then they kind of got weird during the 90s.
And you never know when they're together and when they're not.
Yeah, but this last record, it's like they're back. I mean, it's really good.
Are you kind
I
of are you kind of like Ronnie in the sense that you have a lot of blues influence and that's more your kind of thing? Because Ronnie tells me that he's more blues than '80s rock.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely not 80s. We all came from the 70s.
Oh, right. So around, yeah. So your influences
70s and 60s.
would have been like the Beatles and early rock and roll. Not quite old enough to be like Billy Fury or Fats Domino or anything like that, but
But yeah, I mean, I remember before the Beatles, there was like Elvis and Johnny Cash and
hmm.
just little things like that. Remember my earliest memories. My parents had those records, and then we saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan the first time. And
Oh, and oh wow.
yeah, in 63, and that just changed everything.
At the
Or
height
maybe,
at the height of
yeah,
Beatlemania. Uh, I swear
yeah,
this
their
will.
very first appearance.
I swear this will be the last question. I keep getting things on my mind. I can always have you back later. Doesn't really matter. But is there anything that would get you to do a Kicks reunion? No, I'm not saying it's gonna happen to whoever's listening to this, but I'm saying what would have to happen for you to do it?
Well, I mean, I would. I'm willing.
Oh, okay.
I'm open. I got
Uh,
nothing else to do.
you
But
used to do cooking videos. You don't do those anymore.
yeah, well, I have a girlfriend now. She lives
Oh,
here.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you got things to do at home. I'm assuming that must have come out of COVID. You know, nothing to do. You just decided to start
And
cooking online.
yeah, I was here by myself, and yeah.
That's hey, you know, I wish I could cook. Like, what was it? You made something with duck eggs, a duck egg burger.
Yeah, but it's funny because I go back and watch those now, and man, I've got it down. So, with the smoker and all that
Mm.
stuff. Back then, it was like primitive.
Oh, so you have way more than that now.
Well, I've just sort of, now it's like it was a learning process.
Mm.
I was still, it was hit or miss when I was cooking that stuff.
Well, don't you
But
live in
now,
this? Don't you live in the South? I know you don't live in Maryland.
no, I live in Nashville, right
Oh,
out, right outside of it.
oh, okay, man. You guys are probably getting cooked alive. I got sunburned so bad right now; it's insane.
Yeah, I'm noticing my nose.
If I took my shirt off, I'm purple. I've had to stay inside the last couple days. It reminds me of the first. It's funny. You guys were always talking about M3. It was always raining. Those first two, I can tell you, it was not raining. We were getting cooked alive in that lawn.
Yeah.
My mom actually got permanent skin damage from that first year at that first M3. It was real bad. And then years later, you guys start getting rain.
Yeah. But yeah, in fact, I remember the Judas Priest show where we opened for them. It was raining and freezing cold.
Oh my good. What was, you know what? I'm not going to go on about it, but when you guys talked about the Kicks Cloud, I think you had something going on there because every time you guys played outside, with very few exceptions, it was a downpour.
No.
Even when you played inside, when I saw you guys at Jurgles, it was in the middle of December and it was raining every time I went to Jurgles. It just followed you around. You weren't allowed to play outside.
No.
But I appreciate your time, Brian. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for answering the questions, just sitting here and bullshitting with me for an hour. It's been a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Maybe one day we'll have you back. Really appreciate it. And keep rocking, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, other than Rhino Bucket, I'm sort of just open to whatever comes along.
Hey, you know, nothing wrong with that. I mean, just roll with life. Take what it gives you.
Yeah.